You're on Haggadah Pesach with the topic of Korban Pesach. Let us begin from the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Haggadah Shel Pesach tells us something interesting. Tells us the story in Magid about the story of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Tells us that from the story of Lavan tried to kill everyone. Everyone went down to Egypt. We were very small in numbers, and we became a very big nation over there. And the Egyptians were bad to us. And we screamed out to Hashem, and Hashem heard our voice. He saw what we were going through, and took us out of Egypt. Okay, very simple, short story. Now, something's very interesting at the very end of the story. It says Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim with a strong hand, outstretched forearm. And then we say a very interesting section. Hashem took us out of Egypt, lo alidei malach, lo alidei saraf, lo alidei shaliach. Hashem took us out not through an angel, not through a messenger, but only directly him. Okay, so something interesting over here. First of all, if I would ask you who took us out of Mitzrayim, we'll see how this connects to the Korban Pesach. It all connects all together. Okay, let's go. All right, who took us out of Egypt? Chat, unmute, fear free. Let's go. Join cheer. Who took us out of Egypt? Okay, Hashem took us out of Egypt. But look, Louis, let's see the statement over here. Was it just Hashem? It says, nor by angel, or nor by angel is a messenger. Angel is a servant of Hashem, right? Was there no servant involved, or perhaps there was one, or perhaps even two people that took us out of Egypt? Who were those people who took us out of Egypt? Who was the messenger? Who was the person who was in charge of taking us out of Egypt? Hashem's messenger, Hashem's Moshe. Very good. So let's get this straight. The Haggadah is telling us that Hashem took us out of Egypt, not by a messenger, rather Hashem himself. And this, as the Abarbanel and the Malbim point out, doesn't make any sense, because we know that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one who took us out of Mitzrayim. It was actually Moshe and Aaron. So what's going on over here? So the Haggadah actually goes on, and Haggadah here quotes the Medrash. And the Medrash here says as follows: Shneimar, ve'avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh, ve'hiketi kol bechor be'eretz Mitzrayim. Okay, I will pass in that night. Sorry, it jumped. Hold on. And I will kill all the firstborn of Egypt. Okay, I will do so myself, and no one else, not a messenger, not anyone else. I will be the one who smites the Egyptians that night. Okay, wonderful, great. So, what is the Haggadah teaching us? That when it says that we were taken out of Egypt by a messenger, by Hashem and not by a messenger, refers to what? As it says in Makat Becharot, plague of the firstborn. Now, what in the world is the connection between the plague of the firstborn to leaving Egypt? I don't understand. Again. The Haggadah is telling us the final line after the 10 plagues and everything else we went through. It says that you want to know something, you know how we left Egypt. Only Hashem took us out of Egypt, as it says. Only Hashem did the plague of the firstborn. No one else, just Hashem himself, was the one who smote the firstborn of the Egyptians. What is the connection between the plague of the firstborn and leaving Egypt? True, it was the final plague. But there were 9 other plagues too. What in the world is going on over here? What is going on over here? So over here we have to delve into the commentaries. We had the Barbanel, we had the Malbim, as we mentioned before, and quite a few others, who say that the plague of the firstborn was not just another plague. He had 9 plagues, Dam Svedei Kinim Arov Dever Shchin Barad Arbe Choshech. But Makat Bechorot was different from all the other plagues. Makat Bechorot, literally by its name, the plague of the firstborn, was not a regular plague. There's a concept, and this is a very, very deep idea, which we'll see how it connects with the Korban Pesach. The plague of the firstborn, meaning Hashem kills the firstborn of the Egyptians, and instead of the firstborn of the Egyptians, there's another firstborn in the world, and that's going to be Am Yisrael. What is a firstborn? So let's go. What does a firstborn in a household mean? What does it represent? Now let's think again more the ancient world than today's modern world, even though it might apply a little bit today, right? But the firstborn gets twice as much, right? So talking here about the firstborn, something very special about a firstborn. Let's go. The ancient world, let's think of firstborn. Again, the Torah says gets twice as much. What's unique about a firstborn? Thank you, Ezra. A firstborn. Talk about the plague of the firstborn over here, and then we'll summarize quickly where we're holding. Okay. Okay. So let's go. So firstborn. What does it tell you? What's unique about a firstborn, especially in the ancient world? What's unique about a firstborn? Right. Feel free to unmute yourself, chat. Okay. Firstborn gets a blessing and also responsibility of continuing the line. Right. Also, the firstborn was also the foreman of the house, basically, correct? The older person, the one in charge of everything. Correct. So they're therefore also getting right. Correct. So the concept of firstborn meaning the person with responsibility. There are a lot of psukim. Again, this year we can bring psukim from here to tomorrow. Hashem basically says as follows: the nation of the world who will lead the world, be the most powerful nation in the world, the nation that guides the world, is considered to be the firstborn of Hashem. So in our minds, we'll see again, this will all connect to Korban Pesach. It's just unbelievable. Okay, so the firstborn of Hashem, who was the strongest nation, the most powerful nation, the richest nation in the world, 1 minute before leaving Mitzrayim. Pretty obvious. Who was the most powerful nation a minute before the Jewish nation left Egypt? Who was it? Who was the most powerful nation? Again, feel free to chat or unmute. Either way works. Okay? Who was the most powerful nation? Most powerful nation in the world at the time. Okay, I see here a private chat. 1 second. There we go. Okay. So, again, quick summary. Plague of the firstborn. Firstborn is the most powerful. Hashem now destroys the power of the firstborn, which will again connect to Korban Pesach in a moment, right? So who was the most powerful nation in the world till 1 minute before the Jewish nation leaves Egypt? Who was the most powerful nation? They had a lot of money. Egypt. Okay, great, wonderful. So Egypt, powerful, a lot of money. Hashem purposely brings a famine to the world. People will go down to Egypt and purchase food from Egypt. Egypt becomes strong. Egypt becomes powerful. So Hashem says, I have given all the power of the world to Egypt. Let's see what Egypt can do with that power. Lo and behold, what does Egypt do with that power? What does Egypt do with that power? Egypt was called in Chazal, they bring the world down to 49 levels of tum'ah, 49 levels of impurity, representing far away from spirituality. That was Egypt. Hashem says as follows, look, 1 second. I'm now going to take away the leadership of Egypt as a leader of the world, and there's now going to be a new leader of the world. And that new world is not going to be a world of a nation that's the most powerful, nor the nation that's the richest, but a nation that brings with it a message more powerful than anything else, brings with it monotheism, brings with it ethics, and that's basically the Jewish nation who got a job to be a light to the nations. So the plague of the firstborn, in reality, is not just a plague to show Hashem is powerful, but rather the first 9 plagues were plagues to show Hashem is powerful. Blood, dam, tzfardeh, kinim, arav. Hashem controls the whole world. When it comes to the plague of the firstborn, here Hashem changes the leadership of the physical world from Hashem's firstborn, which was Egypt, to Hashem's new firstborn, which is the Jewish nation with a job to be a light to the nations, to lead the world, to change the world. That is Makat Bechorot. So Makat Bechorot again is something very, very powerful. Now, one second. Very nice to say that, okay, no longer Egypt leading the world, now the Jewish nation will lead the world. There's only one teeny weeny problem, which is that the Jewish nation was not a Jewish nation at the time. True, came from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and they kept their lineage, did not intermarry. All true, but they were idol worshippers. They were completely idol worshippers. So one second, what now? What now are we supposed to do when we have a nation of idol worshippers and they're now supposed to lead the world of monotheism? How could Hashem turn over the world from the Egyptians leading the world to the Jewish nation now about to become a light to the nations, when the Jewish nation were also idol worshippers, bearing the Levium, bearing unique special people, but the nation as a whole were idol worshippers. Now, true, they were pulling out of it, and true, they left Egypt to receive Torah, to pull out of idol worshiping, but those steps had not yet fully come together. So Sarah's saying, correct, they were chosen because of the Avot. We had the right lineage, and I'm sure a lot of wonderful, wonderful, wonderful traits. 100% right. So we have the 9 plagues, and now we have a serious issue because we can't get the Makat Bechorot, which is the way we left Egypt. So let's just see it over here in the Haggadah. When you see it in the Haggadah, I just want you to see the words. Haggadah, as we see over here, talks about the whole story of Mitzrayim, like we saw before. Talks about how terrible it was in Egypt. Then it says Hashem took us out of Egypt, and Hashem took us out of Egypt all by himself, with no messenger and no nothing, only Hashem himself. As it says, Hashem did the plague of the firstborn. And we asked before, what do you mean Hashem took us out of Egypt with no messenger, with not through an angel, not through a messenger? What does that mean? We had Moshe Rabbeinu, we had Aaron, we had a lot of messengers. And then it says, oh, as it says in the plague of the firstborn, that Hashem did the plague of the firstborn. What's the connection between leaving Egypt that only Hashem did, because only Hashem did the plague of the firstborn? What's the connection? What's going on over here? So the idea over here is as follows. Leaving Egypt physically is not important. We're talking here about leaving Egypt conceptually, leaving the Egyptian mentality, leaving the idol worshiping, creating a new world where Egypt is no longer the leader, but rather monotheism, Torah ethics. That's what leaving Egypt means. So it says over here, we suffered in Egypt, and Hashem took us out of Egypt, not physically. Physically, it was Moshe. Physically, it was with a messenger. But Hashem took us out of the essence of Egypt, out of the idol worshiping, out of the concept, out of the methodology of Egypt. Hashem did that. Only Hashem, when Hashem did the plague of the firstborn, taking away the power of the firstborn of Egypt being the leader of the world, moving it over to the Jewish nation, who now was going to become a monotheistic religion, back to it to be more precise, and leading the whole world in that direction. So that's what it says in the Haggadah. But there's one little part missing over here. What do you mean? We all of a sudden now are going to leave Egypt and, oh, Hashem switched from the Egyptian to the Jewish nation? Where, what's going on over here? So we have to see, actually, what it says in the what it says in Sefer Shmot. That's what I was looking for over here. 1 second. Okay. Shmot Yud Bet. Fine. Shmot Yud Bet, it says as follows. I'm going to go through it quickly. Don't worry, we're not going to read the whole thing. Here we go. All right. So Hashem says as follows. We're about to reach the plague now of the firstborn. And Perek Yud Bet, Shmot, Perek Yud Bet, talks elaborately. Hashem says, listen, speak to all the Jewish nation. They should take a special korban. Call and make it a little bigger so we can see. On the 10th, they should take a special korban. Note on the 10th, the korban was brought on the 14th, right? So 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 5 days, a lamb now is kept in the household. And then we have a whole bunch of the halachot of the Korban Pesach. And keep it till the 14th, and then slaughter it, put from the blood on your doorposts, and then you should eat it that night, eat the flesh that night. And of course, the blood post, we all know, of course, don't leave anything till the next morning. Be all ready, all dressed up, because tomorrow morning you are leaving Egypt. And then, says the Pasuk, and I will that night go and smite all the firstborn of Egypt. Whoa, 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 whoa. What's the connection between the Korban Pesach and smiting the firstborn? Well, why are these two related? Well, the next Pasuk says, well, you should know, the blood on the doorposts will be the sign I'll know not to smite the firstborn in that house because I'll see the blood on the doorpost. So the obvious question we all know is 1 second, did Hashem really need them to bring the Korban Pesach and they should put blood on the doorpost so Hashem knows that that house is a house that had the Korban Pesach and Hashem should not smite the firstborn in that house? Hashem really needs us to mark the house? What in the world is going on over here? What's the story? What's the story of the Korban Pesach? So, Sarah, you're bringing the famous Medrash. Very nice. Excellent. That the Korban Pesach was the idol of Egypt. By killing the lamb, by slaughtering the lamb, they slaughtered the idol of Egypt, proving they believe in Hashem, and not in the and not in the gods of Egypt. Now I want to share something with you, which is actually beautiful. With your permission, just give me 1 second. Hold on. Just 1 second. Okay, fine. So they slaughtered the idol of Egypt. So first of all, a number of questions. What Sarah is saying is 100% correct. So the Jewish nation is commanded on the 10th of the month to take the idol of Egypt and then keep it for 5 days. And then on the 14th, slaughter it, take the blood, put it on the doorpost. What more do you need to prove that they no longer believe in the gods of Egypt? They slaughtered the god of Egypt and they put the blood on the doorpost. Hashem saw that as a sign that they do not believe in the god of Egypt and therefore accepted them into the monotheistic nation, believing in Hashem, and now spares them. Those who do not have it in them, it's brought down that they already died in the plague of darkness, so that there would be no embarrassment of them not standing up to that challenge. But let's go one step further. We said a second ago that Makat Bechorot was about Hashem saying, no longer will Egypt be leading the world, but now Torah, spirituality will be leading the world. There's something very unique about the Lamb. The Achronim brings something interesting. You have the various constellations, various powers in each one of the symbols. You also have in Egypt many gods. It was Baal Peor. One of them was the lamb. And it's brought down that the lamb was nothing less, believe it or not, than the god of the firstborn and the god that represented the month of Nisan, which represented, of course, the first month. So there's something about the lamb, which is not just a god of Egypt, but it's the god of the firstborn. Now it gets even better. So the Jewish nation were commanded to slaughter the god of Egypt that was the god of the firstborn. So now the firstborn of Egypt died because they're basically the power of the firstborn was now gone. Hashem destroyed all the power of firstborn. Now the firstborn of the Jewish nation, by slaughtering the lamb, were taking a massive risk because they a second ago still believed in the power of firstborn. The moment they slaughtered it, they actually were sawing off the branch that was supporting them. So they took a massive risk. It wasn't just showing that they don't believe in the God of Egypt, but it was actually taking away all their source of power, completely believing in Hashem. When someone takes away all the source of energy and they have nothing left, by definition, they have proved that they completely now rely on Hashem. So let's see something interesting. Let's take a quick summary we're holding right now. So we said as follows. One, Jewish nation suffers in Egypt terribly. They realize the power of Egypt has gone truly corrupt. They now turn to Hashem. Hashem then now goes and says, okay, are you now ready? Do you have it in you now to not just leave Egypt physically, but now become a light to the nations, create something new? They say yes. Not everyone. Only a fifth of the nation was able to stand up to it. They said yes. Hashem says, fine, I'm going to bring the plague of the firstborn. I'm going to change over the world from the Egyptians leading now to the Jewish nation, creating a new world. And they accept it. Hashem says, fine, before I bring the plague of the firstborn, you now have to cut the branch of the source of your power, off the God of the firstborn you truly believe in, and then put it on the doorpost, and then you can prove that you rely on me and not on anyone else. They did that, and that enabled them now to become the firstborn. So the Korban Pesach again is slaughtering the power of firstborn, the power of leadership was the God of leadership, and now they become completely reliant on Hashem to be the leaders of the world in the world of Hashem. Okay, that's one interesting element of the Korban Pesach. Now we see another interesting element of the Korban Pesach. Something interesting, by the way, the very, very end of this chapter, much, much further on, the Torah says, and you should know, not just in that year in Egypt, but further on, you should also bring a Korban Pesach every single year, which we'll see it was not exactly every single year, but for the sake of argument, let's right now say over here that there were two Korbanot Pesach. It's a famous topic. It was called Pesach Mitzrayim, Pesach Dorot. There was a Korban Pesach which was given when they were in Egypt, and it was called Pesach Dorot, which is the mitzvah of doing Korban Pesach every single year after Egypt. There were two main things that happened in Egypt and never again. No, let's talk about one famous thing, what they had to do with the blood of the lamb in Egypt on Pesach, and we don't do it from there on. Korbanot Pesach, from that moment on, you never had to do it. Okay, let's go. With the blood of the lamb. Little hint over here. What do you do with the blood of the lamb in Egypt? And never again in any other Korban Pesach from there on. The doorpost, excellent. You got to put it on the doorpost, never again. There's something else too. What day did they have to take the lamb? Let's go back to the very, very beginning over here. Okay. And we see something absolutely fascinating with the Korban Pesach. All right, let's go. By the Bereshit Moshe Leimor. All right. Okay, look at Pasuk Gimel on the 10th. Very good. Take the Korban on the 10th. And when did he slaughter it? On the 14th. That's 5 days of holding on to the Korban, right? 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 5 days of holding on to the Korban. Really interesting. Why? Well, that you have to make sure that they're fine, they have no blemishes. Got it, no problem. From that year on, any other Korban Pesach, take it 1 minute before. Make sure it's okay. What in the world is the point of taking the Korban Pesach on the 10th? So we find in the Mechilta of Rabbi Ishmael. Let me just see if I could find it for you over here. Here we go. Here we go. Up, I have to now make it touch smaller so I can, so the chat won't hide it. Okay, here we go. It says in the Mechilta something beautiful, absolutely beautiful. מפני מה הקדים הכתוב לקיחתו של פסח לשחיטתו 4 ימים? Why did they have to take the Korban Pesach 4 days before? היה רב מתיה בן חרש אומר, הרי אני אומר ואעבור אלייך, I'll show you soon the psukim inside. והנה איתך את דודים, הגיע שבועתו שנשבע הגיע שבועתו שנשבע הקדוש ברוך הוא לאברהם שיגאל את בניו. The time had come for the children to be redeemed, but they had no mitzvot. לא היה בידם מצוות שהתעסקו בהם. As it says in the pasuk, so says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I gave him 2 mitzvot, דם פסח ודם מילה, שהתעסקו בה כדי שיגאלו. Okay. Says the Mechilta as follows. Mechilta says, in the name of Reb Matya ben Charash, and we see this over here in the Psukim, and let me show you here in Yecheskel, and we see this actually in the Haggadah. So let me just show it to you first in the Haggadah itself. Let me see, where was the Haggadah Shel Pesach? Here's the Haggadah Shel Pesach. The Haggadah Shel Pesach hints to it. Hints to it. We see over here up above it says, Vahisham Lagoy Gadol Atzum V'Rav, and then it brings a pasuk from Yecheskel, okay, which seems to be completely not connected to anything. What is this pasuk doing over here? What's going on over here? So the pasuk in Yecheskel, there's an interesting chapter in Yecheskel Ted Zayin. If you ever get a chance to see Yecheskel chapter 16, look over there and you'll see where he talks about how Am Yisrael came from nothing and Hashem built them all up. And let's see over here, I will just skim through the chapter just for a second. And Hashem says to me as follows, go tell Jerusalem what they have done wrong. Tell them, why have you sinned against Hashem? Do you not remember where you had absolutely nothing when you were born? I remember when you were born, navel cord was not cut, you were not rubber saw, you were swaddled, you were hurt, and people, no one was pitying you, you were lying there, rejected the open field, and all the commentaries here say it refers to the era of Egypt. So the Jewish nation is born in Egypt, stepped on, enslaved, humiliated, harassed, and I came upon you, and I saw that you were swallowed in blood. And I said to you, in this blood you shall live. Live in spite, here's in spite of your blood, but actually the exact translation also says, live because of the blood. What is going on over here? And that it goes on to say that you were like growing like plants in the field. There was no one to really raise you. The nation just grew, children were born in the fields, and you had nothing, and you were just naked and bare. And then I came upon you, and I spread my wings upon you, upon my robe upon you, and I basically brought you into it says into the oath. Basically, you became mine, and Hashem dressed them up, or into the garments. Basically, I took you where you were bare and stepped on. You had nothing, and I basically brought you under the wings of Hashem. So these psukim, again, we see a little bit of it in the Haggadah Shel Pesach as well, and we see also in the Mechilta, what we said before, that also these psukim are brought as well. So Hashem went to Egypt, saw a nation with nothing, and Hashem says, I will now make you into a special holy nation. I'll bring you into the fold. I'll make you holy. I'll bring you into Torah. I'll bring you to spirituality. And I did it through blood. So there were 2 bloods over there. So I saw, and I saw that you were wallowed in your blood. 2 bloods were there. One, there was a mitzvah of Brit Milah, so that was one mitzvah of blood. What was the other mitzvah of blood that Hashem says, I saw the blood, and that enabled you to live, you shall live because of the mitzvah of blood? That's putting the blood of the Korban Pesach on the doorstep. Okay, wonderful, great. But now, if we look in the Mechilta, look what he says. He says, that's not enough. That's not enough. He says, you had nothing. You were bare. You were absolutely bare. So Hashem speaks to Moshe on the 10th of Nisan. And he now wants to get ready for the Jewish nation to leave Egypt. The Korban was slaughtered on the 14th. They left They started it that night. The next morning they left Egypt. You can't do it in 1 minute. You can't just slaughter the Korban Pesach and then the next minute, yay, we slaughtered the Korban Pesach. We don't believe in the God anymore. They needed 5 days, 5 days of preparation, 5 days of doing a mitzvah morning, afternoon, evening, night. Not just any mitzvah, a mitzvah of human. They put themselves at risk because when the Egyptians saw that they took the God of Egypt, it wasn't just the Jewish nation showing that they don't believe in the God of Egypt anymore. The Egyptians literally threatened to kill them, and the Jewish nation basically put their lives at stake so that they showed their complete devotion to Hashem. And this was done for 5 days. Comes along, this is a beautiful, beautiful medrash. Reb Matya ben Charash says, the Jewish nation now has to leave Egypt. We saw the pasuk in Yechezkel. We see the pasuk also in Yagadah Shel Pesach. You were bare. You had nothing. I had to give you a mitzvah for two reasons. One, to merit leaving. People, you need mitzvot. You need merits to leave. But number two, a mitzvah converts a person into a better person. When a person gives tzedakah, it's not just, oh, you gain some bonus points. Wonderful, in the world to come, you'll cash them in and get some olam haba. When you give tzedakah, you become a better person. When you learn Torah, you become a better person. So Hashem gave them not 1 day of taking the God of Egypt, showing they don't care about it anymore, and not 1 day of risking their lives and saying, I believe in Hashem and not the gods of Egypt anymore, but 5 days from the very beginning of the decree to take them out of Egypt at the 10th of the month. From that moment, they took the Korban Pesach. So quick summary once again. We see that the experience of Egypt was an experience where Hashem, we're going back already, Hashem gave a lot of power to Egypt, made Egypt the firstborn, the most powerful nation. And they lead the world just down the drain. Hashem now brings the Jewish nation there. They experience the Egyptian experience. They scream out to Hashem saying, it's horrible, it's bad. Hashem says, well, fine. Are you now ready to change the world to become the new firstborn? Lead and change the world to become a monotheistic world, ethic world, world of Torah and spirituality. They say yes. Hashem says, fine, I'm now going to prove to you that I am the true God with the 9 plagues. That Hashem controls the earth, the rivers, the animals, the heavens. Hashem controls everything. And then he says to the nation, are you ready? And they say yes. He goes, fine. Remove yourself from the Egyptian gods. Remove yourself from the Egyptian culture. They say, well, you can't just do it in 1 second. You're right. 5 days of it. 5 days of holding on to the Korban Pesach. And then finally slaughtering it. And that gave them the stamina, the buildup, the power in the mitzvot to merit leaving Mitzrayim. That was put on the doorpost when Hashem came to them on the 15th. And this is really the big idea. They weren't just, oh, they just did an act to show. It wasn't that. It was after 5 days, literally 5 days. For a person to risk their life for 1 second is one story. To risk their life for 5 days is a completely different story. To internalize something for 5 days is a completely different story. That's exactly what the Mechilta over here says. Hashem took them from nothing and completely built them up. And now, when the 15th came, or the 14th, when they shechted the Korban Pesach, they were completely ready now to leave Egypt on the 15th. So that's the Korban Pesach. Now, from that moment on, there was a different halacha of Korban Pesach for generations. Now, what's interesting is, if you go back to the psukim over there, you see that the Korban Pesach is not. Here, let me just skip to the very, very end of the chapter, same as Yud Bet. Okay, at the end of Yud Bet, there's a special halacha that Zdot Chukat Pesach for generations on, so Shavas Nachir Lo Yochal Bo, B'Bayit Echad Yochal, a special halacha that you do Korban Pesach for generations on. And then in the next chapter, it says, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't just do it next on, but only when you come to the land of the Canaanites will you, now you come to Eretz Yisrael, only there you will now sacrifice. So Korban Pesach was, the commandment is only to do it once they reach Eretz Yisrael. Now, they did bring the Korban Pesach the following year, and that was a special commandment for that year. So, quick summary, they would ask you, how many Korban Pesach were there? You say 3. One, there was one in Egypt, which was all about stepping away from the God of Egypt, connecting with Hashem, 5 days of a true experience. Then there was a commandment for Pesach when they reach Eretz Yisrael, and putting that aside, there's another commandment for Pesach in the second year when they were in the desert, even though they were not in Eretz Yisrael, a special commandment then to do Korban Pesach. The rest of the time in the desert, there was no Korban Pesach. They come into Eretz Yisrael, once again, there was a Korban Pesach. What I'd like to show you now is they have, by the way, a very, very interesting YouTube that they did over here from, who is it, from Machon Mikdash? I have to see exactly who did it. But nonetheless, I just want to show you here some pics, and then I want to talk about the topic of, 1 second, what about today? Can we bring a Korban Pesach today? That's coming up. Just 1 second. I just want to show you some of the pictures. Okay? So, in the details of the Korban Pesach, okay, I'm not going to go through the whole video. I just want to, okay, I just want to be able to go through over here, just some pictures. Here's the Beit HaMikdash. Okay, now, they would bring either a lamb or a kid. It had to be up to a year old. That's the halacha. It's got to be less than a year, either a lamb or a kid, meaning from a sheep or a goat. Okay, and they had to bring all of the Jewish nation brought the Korban Pesach literally from the early afternoon after the Korban Tamid of Ben Harbaim, after the Korban of Mincha. From that moment on, they would bring till the night, they would bring the Korban Pesach. You had literally rows of Kohanim. It was just unbelievable what was going on over there. You had rows of Kohanim where they would slaughter the Korban Pesach. Here in the very bottom, you see a Korban Pesach being slaughtered, and the blood would have to be put in the Mizbeach. Most people aren't aware that Korban Pesach was an actual, we'll see where it's important regarding today the Korban Pesach. It wasn't just a lamb that was slaughtered and people ate the lamb. It was an actual korban in Beit HaMikdash. So they would have to go into Beit HaMikdash with the lamb, slaughter the lamb. The Kohanim then, in a, you see it in an assembly line, would take the blood and they would basically squirt it on the Mizbeach. Let me just see if I get a picture of it over here. Let me see 1 second. Here we go. We have the lamb. Okay, they would check the lamb. With your permission, let me. Okay, it would be in three different groups. So here's picture number 1. Lamb would be slaughtered. It then would be given to the Kohanim. There were thousands and thousands of Kohanim. They would take it all the way to the Mizbeach. It would be poured on the Mizbeach itself. Then parts of the Korban would be dissected. Let me just see if I can get through this a second. Would be dissected and put on the Mizbeach itself. Okay, that's not what I want to see over here. Fine. The lamb then would be skinned, and the parts of it would be taken out and brought on the Mizbeach itself. And then the rest of the lamb would be they'd put like a stake through it. It had to be like a wood of Etz Rimon, which basically had no has very, very little liquid in it. It's barely moist. They would put it through and they would basically barbecue. Let me see if I can get a good picture over here of it. Here we go. They would basically take the lamb, and again, some parts of it were brought on the Mizbeach itself, and the rest of it this is a steak going through it, and they would have the liver and some other parts of it would be put separate from the lamb, and this is what it would look like, and this would be put into the oven, and here it would be basically barbecued. Okay, now, that's the Korban Pesach. You should know there was very, very little meat, from the Korban Pesach itself. Therefore, you ask why. First of all, a kid doesn't have that much meat. Number 2 is that you would maximize the amount of people per lamb. So each person would only get a kazait. He may have had easily 20, 30 people. I don't know the exact number, but a lot of people per lamb, maximizing the amount of people. Each one would get just a small, teeny bit for the Korban Pesach. So what would they actually have for the meal? Now there's another sacrifice called the Korban Chagiga, which was already a large animal, a cow, that would be slaughtered. The Korban Chagiga, that would be slaughtered. That would be where they would get their main meat from. That's why in the Seder plate we have sides for the Korban Pesach, represented usually by the Ashkenazim, usually by a chicken wing, because we don't want to have anything which is actually of lamb, so there would be no suspicion it's actually a Korban Pesach. So that's, you have a broiled wing of chicken wing as the representative of the Korban Pesach. And then there's another one. We have an egg which represents Avilut. We're in mourning because we don't have the Beit HaMikdash. That represents the Korban Chagiga, which is a major source of meat actually for the meal. So, quick summary of this thing over here is that we saw over here how you shech the Korban Pesach. It was a real Korban in Beit HaMikdash. People brought a Korban, not one per person, but really one per group of people. They would together make a group. You couldn't separate from the group once the lamb was slaughtered, so they have a big operation before getting people all together, organizing them, group per lamb. Lamb would go in, slaughtered quickly, the blood taken, poured in the Mizbeach. It would be dissected, parts of it sacrificed on the Mizbeach, the rest given to the people, and they would put like a rod through it, and they would barbecue it with other parts like the liver and some other sections separately on the barbecue, on the rod over there. And of course, the rest, as we mentioned before, would be put on the Mizbeach itself. So now we come to the very, very big question. What happens today? Today, can you bring a Korban Pesach or not? Wow, one of the most, I would say, it's not just a complex topic, but it also involves a tremendous amount of politics with it. Also halacha, also politics. A very big question. So I just want to share that over the course of history, you see that many, many, many rabbis and a lot of letters and discussions back and forth talk about, can we bring the Korban Pesach today? Well, first of all, you see that you must have a Mizbeach. You must have Kohanim who actually sacrifice it on the Mizbeach. So you need to have an altar, and you need to also know where the altar goes, and you need to have real Kohanim. And wait, there's another issue too. Aren't we all tameh? We're all not pure. So there's a famous line, which again, if we had about another 10 hours, we can go through a sugya which is endless. My goal over here in the next few minutes is to give you a taste of the various topics which actually are discussed on this whole thing. One is that when everyone is impure in Am Yisrael, or the overall majority to be more precise, the halacha is that one can bring sacrifices that have a unique time, such as a Korban Pesach. Well, why don't we bring sacrifices? One is impure. So there's a lot of reasons why we don't bring sacrifices. One is a whole debate if we need a Beit HaMikdash. It's a whole discussion if the Kedusha, which was then, holds till now. It's a big discussion. So one major discussion is the holiness that was then, is it still hold today, even though we don't have a Beit Mikdash? Now, we see in the Rambam and many others that say, yes, the holiness that was in time of the Beit Mikdash holds till this very day. The place of the Beit Mikdash is holy, even though there's no Beit Mikdash. Okay, that's just be aware that it's one topic. Another topic is, wait a second, but everyone's impure. All right. But if everyone's impure, you could bring certain korbanot that are depending on time, even though everyone's impure. So why then not bring a Korban Pesach? Well, the Korban Pesach and other korbanot, there's a discussion and argument between the Rambam and others Do we say that when everyone's impure, you definitely can and should bring korbanot? Or is it like, it's not exactly recommended? Or further, to be more precise, the Rambam brings also that you need a Kohen Gadol who has the tzitz, the famous gold on the Kohen and the Kohen's forehead, that would atone for impurities in the Beit HaMikdash, meaning that it's not 100% to bring korbanot when people are impure. One needs atonement for it. So it's okay, but it's not 100%. Yet others say when everyone's impure, even if you don't have the Kohen's tzitz to atone for impurity, one can still bring korbanot to Beit HaMikdash. There's another element too. Well, 1 second. Other korbanot, there's really no point in bringing them, because even though you can bring korbanot when people are impure, but you can't eat the korbanot. The only exception to the rule, which I can show you here again, the Mishnah in Pesachim says, that the only exception to the rule is the Korban Pesach. That if you can sacrifice it when everyone's impure, you can also eat it when everyone's impure. Why? Because all the other sacrifices come for a reason other than eating. Korban Pesach is a special korban, which is mainly for eating. So quick summary till now. Can you bring korbanot when everyone's impure? The answer is yes, you can. Is it really something one should do? Is it that, but the evidence okay? Not clear. Also, the Rambam appears to say that you need atonement if one does it, and you need the Kohen Gadol with the tzitz to atone. Interesting discussion over there too, argument over there. It's not 100% clear when we're impure if it's okay to do it where there's no Kohen Gadol to atone. Another element is other korbanot, other sacrifices. What's the point of bringing it anyway? You can't eat the korbanot, but Korban Pesach you can. So we start putting it together. You see a big group of rabbis saying, you know something? We're all impure, but there are opinions that say that you could bring a korban if you're impure. And a Korban Pesach you'd also eat. So why not bring a Korban Pesach according to those opinions that say that the temple place everything is holy even today, and we're impure and it's okay, and we can eat it? Well, let's go on. There are some other issues. Well, first of all, you need to put parts of the korban on the mizbeach, sprinkle the blood, and take parts of the Korban Pesach and put it on the mizbeach. So where are you going to put the mizbeach? So some commentaries say, well, we do know where the kotel is today, and we could take measurements, and we could figure out more or less where the mizbeach is. Well, it's the Dome of the Rock today, according to a lot of commentaries. The Dome of the Rock is a place of the Kodesh Kodashim, so it would be not on the place of Dome of the Rock, obviously, but you make the calculation more or less where it is. You can more or less figure out it's more going more towards the eastern wall, towards Shar HaRachamim, towards the east of the Temple Mount. So let's assume that's solvable. Others say, no, well, what do you mean? You make a calculation, it has to be exact. It's another topic. Another topic is 1 second. What about Kohanim? You need a Kohen. How do you know who's a Kohen? Most Kohanim we have today, we're not 100% sure they're Kohanim. And another big debate breaks out. Do we rely on someone who says they're a Kohen? If they're a Kohen, do we just rely on tradition, even though it's not 100% established? But yet, that's carried on from generation to generation. So again, a whole discussion and debate over there. And then there's another philosophical idea that maybe the time has not yet come. Now you see, and just to end, you see something unbelievable. We see it in different generations. You see Rabbi Karlap, who was the Rosh Yeshiva back at the beginning of the 1920s, of Merkaz Rav Kook, and you see Rabbi Kiva Eger, the Chatam Sofer. You see a lot of discussions going back many years ago. They tried to get discussion. Maybe we get permissions from the Turks. Maybe we get permissions from the British. And if we can get permission, maybe we can actually put a mizbeach on the place. Again, we put all the combo together, that the place of Beit HaMikdash, the holiness from Beit HaMikdash still stands till today. Topic number one. Topic number two is that, yes, even though everyone is impure, we'll go by the opinions that say that we don't need atonement. It's fine. We could bring the korban, and everyone agrees that the korban pesach can also be eaten. And let's assume we can more or less figure out where the mizbeach is, and let's assume we can rely on the fact that the kohanim, even though we don't know 100% of the kohanim, but we have the tradition, and you put a whole bunch of combos together, and we actually have access to the place. At the end of the day, nor the Turks, nor the British, and in modern day also, it's not a simple thing at all to get permission to be able to do so over there. So at the end of the day, you see the overall majority of poskim said because of all the many different topics and discussions and discussions and arguments to say that yes, you definitely can 100%, and it's just a matter of the politics. No, that's incorrect. What is more correct to say is that there are so many discussions and debates halachically, if we even can bring the Korban Pesach today, put that together also with the fact that from a political point of view, it's actually not that simple. That Lamaisa, you see again back from the British and the Turkish period too. You see that being like the main things that well, the time has just not yet come. So again, I just want to share again. The topic is humongous, but literally giving you just a taste of what's going on about Korban Pesach today. But just to summarize the shir again, from start to end, just literally in one line. The Korban Pesach is something extremely special. The Korban Pesach was a dedication, Sarah, like you said, of showing this was the God of Egypt, which represented the firstborn, representing the strength of Egypt. They had many gods. This was the God of the strength. When the Jewish nation basically slaughtered the Korban Pesach, they say we no longer believe in the power of Egypt. From their perspective as idol worshippers, they were sawing off the branch that they stood on and proved that they completely believe in Hashem. They did it for 5 days straight as a learning and growing experience, as we see over there in the Mechilta. And therefore, before Hashem changes the firstborn in the world from the Egyptian, the plague of the firstborn, the power of Egypt dies. Not just the firstborn. Anyone of power, says the Medrash, anyone of power in Egypt died that night, barring Pharaoh, who was left alive to see what happened. All the power of Egypt dies that night, and now the Jewish nation takes over to lead the world, in a world of Torah and ethics. That is Korban Pesach. That was the story of Egypt at the time. And from then on, in the desert itself, they did not bring the Korban Pesach except for 1 year. And when they come into Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah is every year to bring the Korban Pesach. We also saw over here at the Korban Pesach was an actual Korban brought in Beit HaMikdash. Blood on the Mizbeach, parts of the animal brought as a Korban on the Mizbeach was a real Korban. And then people came and then they would, we saw over there, barbecue the Korban, and a lot of people joined together in the Korban Pesach. From that year on to basically, and the Pesach from there on, and that's what the name of this to end. The name of the holiday is Pesach because it's not just about, oh, Hashem skipped over the houses of the Jewish people, but it's about Korban Pesach, saying that the reason Hashem skipped over the firstborn, i.e., the reason Hashem destroyed the firstborn of the world and gave the power now to the Jewish nation as a mission, as a light to the nations, was because they showed the true dedication in Hashem, which is what Pesach is forever and ever. So the Chag Pesach, literally just to end, Chag Pesach is about us understanding two things. One, of course, the miracle that Hashem killed the Egyptian firstborn, but left the Jewish firstborn, but more so that we have a mission and a goal to be a light to the nations. Our dedication to Hashem to be the firstborn and lead the world into a better world. All that is actually represented in the words Pesach. We now became the firstborn, and Pesach again is the God. In Egypt was the God of the firstborn. We presented that we put all our trust not in the gods of Egypt, but completely in Hashem, that we are Hashem's firstborn to lead the world, to be a light to the nations with full dedication to Hashem. So, Ad Kan, the story of learning of Korban Pesach. I thank everyone very, very much for joining us. And B'ezrat Hashem, we should be Zeiche, should merit bringing the Korban Pesach in Beit HaMikdash, Yom Rabbi Amenu.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much.